Chapter 10. Lycell uncontrollably and unwillingly shifted back to his human form and stumbled naked to his truck. He managed to start the motor. Blood flowing down his arms in large drips. Blood from a head wound dripping freely into his eyes. He wiped his eyes, but that wasn't enough, and the blood continued to trickle into them. Blinking and rubbing his eyes didn't help. His vision became fuzzy and he felt lightheaded, but he kept driving through the snow and blood, trying to get home to the ranch, to Adrienne, to his family and to his pack. Why did he choose not to call Adrienne and tell her where he had been and apologize for being an ass? 6 sons she gave him, and he behaved like a teenager. He should have known better, he thought. It was the first time he had been shot. It felt like a sting. A sting from an insect bite. Then after the heat and blistering pain poured through him. It was as if a bear had attacked him, but much worse. He realized now he could die from the gunshot wound and never see Adrienne again. He could bleed to death, and no one would know where he was, or to look for him until it was too late. His thinking became vague. He turned on the radio to focus his mind and to keep it active. The snow dropping fast and heavy on the windshield, and now harder than before. The windshield wipers straining from the heavy snowflakes couldn't keep up. How long will it take for him to get home? He questioned. How long will it take for him to see Adrienne? Hitting the button for his windows, he stuck his head out and let out a feeble howl. That was his way of saying how stupid he had been. How juvenile. It was something he expected of his sons. After being with Adrienne and feeling the love she had for him, how could he leave her and not tell her where he was going? He banged his fist on the steering wheel. Driving for a few minutes felt like hours, but it wasn't even a minute had passed. There were no cars on the road but his. Why would there be? Only a werewolf with keen eyesight could navigate through this, and even with his eyesight it wouldn't be enough to get through the snow. He thought about getting out and running home, but he had no change of clothes, and he might freeze before he shifted if he had the strength. He couldn't even gauge how many miles he would have to run in this freezing weather. An hour drive from Lake Tahoe on foot and at full stride might take him 3 hours. 3 hours in cold weather, bleeding, naked, and hungry, he would never make it. It took strength every time a werewolf shifted. It took fresh meat in his diet, and he couldn't remember when he had last eaten. His mind became unhinged. With cloudy vision and unbalanced mind brought on by the loss of blood, Lycell thought he saw Adrienne standing in the middle of the road. Swerving to keep from hitting her, he veered to the left, hit something, and the truck plunged over the guardrail into an embankment. Tumbling over, rolling over with the truck, somewhere Lycell lost conscious. The Ford came to a rest against a large tree. When Lycell woke, his legs were pinned under the dashboard and the steering wheel bent into his chest. Unable to move his legs, and unable to remember why he was naked in a truck, in surroundings he didn't recognize, he tried pulling his legs and they wouldn't move. Then with all the strength he could muster, he pushed up the steering column, pulling his legs from under the dashboard. But when he tried moving his legs, they felt like dead weight. Was he crippled before or after the accident? He wondered. He shook his head, trying to remember. He blinked his eyes, and covering them were a film of blood restricting his eyesight. He passed his hand across his eyes and then nose and lips, then over his face. His face didn't appear to be damaged. What he felt was a small amount of blood flowing from a cut on his head. His vision appeared better. Unusually better than before. Lycell didn't question why he could see miles ahead of him. The relief he felt at just seeing anything made him happy. He laughed knowing that he could at least see. But that notion had been spoiled at the thought of not being able to walk. His mind focused on why he couldn't walk, on his memory loss, and on the burning pain from the bullet wound in his shoulder and arms. Why had he been shot? The pain from the bullet gave way to the pain in his legs. And that's when he realized that he wasn't paralyzed before the accident, and he wasn't paralyzed now. He glanced at the wound on his shoulder and arm, and the scars across his chest which appeared to be old. He studied the old wound. Was he some kind of hunter? Too many questions he couldn't answer occupied his mind. What about the woman he thought he saw earlier on the road? Who was she? And why was he driving naked? As Lycell began to think about why he was in this accident, it came to him that it was because of this woman he thought he knew which had distracted him. But he couldn't connect the face with a name and how she fit into his life. Looking around the truck, he saw nothing. There wasn't even a phone. Nothing. If he couldn't walk, how was he to get out of the wreck? And if he got out into the snow, he would freeze. But he had to get out of the truck and get to the road. Looking out the smashed window, he noticed the snow easing up. Raising his head proved painful. He placed his hand on his temple and felt a large gash where the blood had dried. He had been struck by something in the truck. Glancing around, he saw the culprit. It was the gear shift when he tumbled around. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious, because he couldn't remember where he was coming from or where he was going. Why wasn't he wearing his seatbelt? Reaching for the handle to get out, his primary thought was to get to the road, so Lycell opened the door. That was easy, he mumbled. Now what? He dragged his upper body out with his hands, as he pulled his legs behind him, falling deep into the snow. Grunting and moaning from pain as he felt the biting cold sear his skin, and with his painful, useless legs dragging behind him, Lycell managed a feat no man could have. But he never questioned how he was able to do that. He didn't have time. It was now the middle of the day, and warm, considering it was freezing. And then there is the matter of him being naked. How long could he stay alive like this? He wondered. But he had to stay alive. There is the matter of the woman with the beautiful face, smiling at him. She must be something to him, he thought. I have to find food and water. He glanced around at the open door to the truck, and there wasn't a sign of anything to eat or drink. After getting out, there was no way he would go searching around for something because of his hunger. He couldn't see anything that would satisfy it. He heard something that sounded like water moving, but how could he hear water moving? He questioned. And how could he survive in these temperatures without any clothes? He batted this around his mind. But the cold and his hunger prevented him from concentrating on an answer. Pulling with his powerful arms and dragging his feet behind, he worked his way through the snow-covered leaves and branches from towering pine trees and brush. The snow had been a friend and foe. Because the ground had been hilly and full of rocks without the snow piled high, he would have to work even harder. He thought he would find some kind of animals or water. But he satisfied himself by eating the snow. He knew instinctively that he could live as long as he had enough water. Live long enough to find food if he didn't die from his wounds. He knew instinctively that the predators would be out later. Perhaps at night. How did he know that, unless he was a hunter? The worst position to be in, he thought. Gazing up, he saw sunlight. It would be a long, excruciating climb to the highway. The rocks under the snow would make it worse for him. But he had to do something. He couldn't stay in one place.